Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to As Yours Wednesday. I'll just wait for people to come online. Okay, our guest is here. Let me just invite them. Hi, I can't see or hear you. Okay. I'm gonna wait for them and invite them again. Technical issues. I was just wondering, okay, how is it so smooth? Hi. Okay, I'm gonna accept the invite. Hi. I No, I can't hear you. Sorry. No, it's absolutely. I I heard a little bit in the middle.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfectly clear. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This gives me a lot of anxiety every time I do this, but nevertheless,
Okay.
hi.
No, I mean, hello. So the technical issues are a part of the life, so we always have them. So I mean, I've gotten used to getting anxiety about that and then getting over that. So yeah.
Yeah, I
How are
get
you?
it.
How's your day?
I'm fine, I'm fine. I'm doing well. I'm really excited, to talk about something that I'm really passionate about. And yeah, especially with you all who are doing really good work in the field of, having conversations. So it's an honor. Yeah.
Yep, thank you. So let me just quickly introduce Ria Sharma. The pronouns are they, them, and MX. So they're a TED speaker and activist. They're very vocal about LGBTQA issues. And I remember seeing them first, I think it was 3 years back, right? 3 or 4 years back. Kashish, you were on the panel. So I was in the
Ah,
audience. I was like, wow. I think it was 3 years back. 3 or 4, I don't remember.
that's
So it
beautiful. That's
was
beautiful.
really fun. So, do you want to add anything? Did I miss out anything in the intro?
No, I mean, all of us are just doing our bit for the society. It's just
Yep.
that. Yeah.
Yep. So, personally, or like, okay, let's start with the let's get the cliche personal questions.
Yeah.
Like, how was your journey of discovering your identity, especially when you uh, talk about conditioning and how that impacts discovering? How has that been for you?
So I think like I have had a very privileged story of being a queer person, also because of, my religion, my caste, and all of that. So I think I have had a lot of privilege growing up queer. Regardless of that, I've had, typical difficulties of, of bullying, of, online blackmailing and all of that. But I think regardless of that, I'm really grateful for all the support that I got. My journey started quite early in life, where I was maybe just 5 years old and I knew that I was gender fluid. Although, I didn't have any vocabulary to explain what I was going through, but the feeling is always there. You can't
Yep.
say that, okay, when I turned 16, I turned gender fluid. It was never like that. I was 5 and I was gender fluid, just that it was just the feelings that I had, and I didn't have the words. So it started back then, and with the kind of exposure that I got, I started exploring spirituality. I started exploring myself to reach a point where, I am able to cope up with gender dysphoria pretty well now. And, I'm in love with myself, my body, and all of that. So I think it's definitely an exhausting journey. Not that even with the privilege and, the support that I got, that it was not difficult, but I think not losing hope in yourself really helps.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that really, changed my journey, because even with the difficulties, I knew that I wanted to do something big in life. So, yeah, that has been,
Lovely.
the gist of my journey.
Uh,
Yeah.
How is it with your family and peers, if you want to talk about that?
Definitely. I think, like, again, this is a very cliche question, and it comes up every time a queer person is talking about themselves. कि आपका coming out कैसा था? I feel like, although yes, coming out is a really, like, really big time in your life, really big episode. As a queer person, especially in a country which is not yet aware about queer lives, I think you have to come out multiple times in your life, and all come outs are as important as
Hmm.
coming out to your parents. But specifically, my parents were really accepting of me. The only thing that my mom said was कि मुझे फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि तुम लेस्बियन हो, जेंडर फ्लूइड हो, मुझे यही फर्क पड़ता है कि तुम अच्छे इंसान हो. And I mean, those words just
Yeah.
changed my life, because now I knew that I would still have, like, the support of my parents. Even though I fall, I break my heart, they will
Yep.
always be there regardless of anything.
Yep.
So I think after I turned 16, I came out to my parents. Everything has really changed for me, because, not that I've not got people who have rejected me, but I've learned that
Hmm.
their rejection does not define anything that I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I've had really, like, really good support and allyship around me. So yeah, I'm
Yeah. I
really lucky.
think I think with parents. I mean, in general, not just in our society, we look up to them as children, and I think once we get support from their side, your attitude when it comes to your sexuality or yourself, the whole world changes. You will be like, people don't accept me. I don't care. My parents are there.
Yeah,
So वो पूरा attitude ही it's like a 360-degree shift.
true.
And something you were saying earlier about you have to do multiple coming outs. I think with the same people you end up doing it multiple times sometimes.
Ooh. Yeah. It has been the same for me. I came out in 2016 as lesbian, and
Hmm.
just a year after that I came out as gender fluid, and then I was like, Mom, Dad, call me queer, and then I came out to them about my pronouns, and now I'm like, what else can I do? Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So again, I mean, it's gender and sexuality is fluid. You discover things as you go, especially living in a cishet society where you don't get the language. I mean, it takes almost 20 years, 30 years, sometimes more to even find the language to define yourself. So yeah, more and
Yeah,
more coming outs should happen, even if it's from the same person or different people.
true. True.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think this is something that we are working towards as you are in developing different narratives because generally it's when somebody says queer, it doesn't define one identity. There are very many ideas, and I mean most of the labels that we use predominantly are Eurocentric, but I'm sure so many identities don't have labels yet. So we want to hear more stories, and which is one of the things that we are focusing at as you are the community space that we develop. So again, moving on, what is your do you want to talk about your activism and Jimmy Foundation?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I feel like whenever we talk about activism is not just, not just what we see typically, but living in a society which is not yet aware of LGBT. I think just being LGBT in itself is activism. Uh,
Yep.
Maybe not a lot of people will agree to that, but I think, like, just being yourself, and even though if you have not come out, just fighting that internal fight. Uh, is courageous, and
Yep.
I'm yeah, I mean, I'm really proud of all of them who are queer and fighting their own battles. And I mean, that's activism. So particularly the
Yeah.
activism that I do is educating people about LGBT, educating people about mental health, and also integrating spirituality in it, because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times people would think that LGBT is not spiritual, it's not religious. But if we truly understand what queerness is and also what spirituality is, we'll realize that being queer is spiritual. So I think also, talking about that in spaces where we usually won't accept expect these conversations to have,
Hmm.
like, schools, colleges, corporates, or just
Hmm.
anywhere that we can have a conversation. So I think that's
Yep.
been my activism. And with Jimmy Foundation, unfortunately, uh, we had to put ourselves down a little bit and just
Oh,
stop our work in lockdown.
right.
But individually, everybody who was involved in Jimmy Foundation is still working, still doing their activism. So
Okay.
at the end of the day, Jimmy's soul is with all of us. So yeah, that's about it. And yeah, I mean, everybody is an activist, so with or without a
Yep.
label of uh being an activist, I think everybody's doing the bit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's important to bring in all conversations, I mean, queerness into any space, because any space will have queer people, and there are so many identities. So it makes it
Yeah.
all the more important to stand in places and say, I am different and I'm okay with it, and you can be different in any many ways that you feel, and that's still okay, right? Um, so yeah, that's like a really strong message in terms of querying all and every spaces. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, this is what I want a lot of focus on. The next one that I'm going to ask: what are the joys of being gender fluid?
I think uh apart from all the discrimination that's there, everything about being queer is gay, right? Is happy, is positive.
Happy.
I think like one of the most important things that I've realized is, even though I have found a label for myself, it says that I'm gender fluid and all of that. I think I've got this opportunity to explore so many different sides of my gender, so many different sides of my identity. I think, being queer has also, taught me to not get too attached to the labels that society gives me,
Hmm.
even with the labels of my religion, of my caste. It
Hmm.
defines, nothing about uh, what kind of a person I am. So,
Yep.
not just about being queer, but all the labels that,
Right.
the society gives me, I'm not too attached to them anymore. So I think that was
Hmm.
one of the biggest lessons that I've, learned being queer. And especially especially being queer, I mean, a lot of people, because of, society's pressure and all of that, a lot of people are
Hmm.
not able to explore so many different sides of them. So
Yep.
now that I'm an out gender fluid person, I have kind of got that freedom that even though I want to, explore myself as, a more masculine person or a feminine person, I am,
Hmm.
I'm seen as valid, at least. So, I
Yeah.
mean, that's not
Absolutely.
how we should look at it, but I think everybody is valid in their own spaces, in their own identities.
Yep.
But
Yep.
somehow being a open gender fluid person gives me that freedom that I could do anything in the world and people would just understand, even though it's just rejecting and understanding कि हाँ ये तो gender fluid है, ये कुछ भी कर सकता है. But I think it has given me a beautiful space. And yeah, and I mean, now I'm also getting to know more about myself, where I'm learning new terms like two-spirited and stuff like that. And I
Hmm.
think I'm understanding myself more and more. I think the entire
Hmm.
essence of the queer, I don't like to say community, but the queer space, the queer family, is that it
Hmm.
supports you to explore yourself more and more every day.
Hmm.
There's this very famous meme or a joke that comes up that, once you understand that you are lesbian, then there's this entire idea of being gender fluid that runs behind you. Then there's something else that comes up, right? I think
Yeah.
although we laugh at it, that's the beauty of being queer, that it gives you the space. So I think these have been some joys, and accepting parents have added to that joy, that you know I
Hmm.
can be myself, or I can just talk about my crushes, or talk about my lovers to my parents. And I think that is a beautiful
Hmm.
space to have, where
Oh yeah.
even my parents are involved in my love life. And I think that space is
That's
really
so sweet.
important for, yeah, I mean, it feels
Yeah.
fulfilling. It's important for everybody to
Yeah.
have that space. Unfortunately, that's not everybody's story, but I hope that the next generation can create that space for their kids. Yeah.
Yeah. I. Yeah. I mean. having parents involved in your love life, as I think as queer people, the most we struggle is to find a partner or maybe find support
Absolutely.
spaces, right? And you have like set benchmarks where you're like, I talked to my parents about my love life. So yeah, that's yeah, I mean, like you said, understanding yourself, and once you've broken that binary and you have accepting parents, this is what you have. The rest of the part that is there to explore, like
Yeah.
absolutely. And I see somebody in the comments said if a normal person have at least 50% of problems, being LGBT will have 200% problems. I mean, I'm not particularly a fan of the word normal person.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I think everybody is normal, but
Absolutely.
200 problems mostly not, I mean, in my opinion, not because we are queer, it's because the society
Yeah.
is like that.
Absolutely. I completely agree to that. There's this entire idea that, exactly like you said, that's the idea of what being queer means to the society, right? So even
Hmm.
when we talk about feminism, there are two people, there
Hmm.
are just a man or a woman, an assigned female at birth and an assigned, male at birth. The male at birth would
Hmm.
definitely get a step up, right? And
Yep.
then maybe if they are gay, they will step one step down, and the female,
Hmm.
if they are cis and het, they will get a step up. So that's the entire play of, being
Yeah.
queer, being marginalized, right? We're marginalized at so many levels. So if you happen
Yeah.
to be, a disabled Muslim gay, gay person, then it gets 200% more difficult. So it's it's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah, when we talk about also religion, maybe I get more privilege than, a Muslim gay person because I identify as Brahmin. So, I mean, that's the entire play of identity. So, yeah,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
I cut you down. I'm really sorry for that. Yeah.
No, no, no. No, no, no. I was just going to say, I think it's the another thing that we want to do, and as you are, is bring out Indian stories, because these conversations are, I feel, cutting across caste lines, cutting across religious lines, which you typically don't find in at least 70% of the content, which is US or Eurocentric content, right? We have different layers than what they have. I'm not saying they're easier or like, I think they're different. And we've had guests, we've had a lot of people tell us, ki, oh, at least when I was growing up in the 90s, I would find stuff to read online, but it's just like, okay, white people, okay, yeah, okay, white stories and their coming out stories, and then there's one rare random desi story. So we want more conversations around of being queer. uh, so yeah, I mean, what you pointed out last was literally cutting across caste and class and religion line. That was beautiful. And yes, we have a lot of layers, and we all have our own struggles,
Yeah,
whether privileged or not privileged, across layers.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So one of the questions we have from the audience is, what were the first memories about the gender incongruence that you mentioned before? That what were
Yeah.
the first few things that you could remember at this point, that where
Mm,
you felt ki I'm probably not this gender that I'm
yeah.
assigned to?
Yeah, like I think it's weird how I remember just the point that I realized that I was gender fluid when my dad used to just, shave his beard every day. And so I would just look up to
Hmm.
him and say, that, look up to him and just think to myself that even I want to do that. If that means, if shaving your beard means being a boy, then I want to do that. Right. So I would just go up to him and say, "Ki dad, even I want to shave," and he would just, playfully put shave on my
Oh,
face, and I would just use a toy letter T that I had. So as
right,
alphabet, just use T and just pretend that I was
right.
shaving, and that kind of became a ritual for me. And initially, everybody thought that, children do all these kinds of things when they are young, but eventually, I kind of realized that that became the safe space for me to, be myself, to feel that, okay, this was
Hmm.
something that I'm truly comfortable in, and this is something that that makes me feel comfortable. This is where I belong. And so that was the point where I realized that, you know, maybe I just wanted to be a boy. That was the first point. But I think slowly with menstruation or with periods, I started understanding that, uh, yeah, it makes me uncomfortable, but it also gives me the honor to have a womb. And this is just my experience. Not every gender fluid person would,
Right, right,
experience this. A lot of people feel extremely dysphoric having menstruation,
right.
but to me, because for me, being feminine and being masculine or being androgynous is equally an honor and an experienced gender in that way. I think it has helped me appreciate my body and all the sorts of things. So I think the first, points have been, yes, the shaving incident, and also, starting to get my periods every month, and learning to embrace it every month. So I think that has really helped me. Yeah.
That how do you remember how old you were at that point?
Around 5 years old. So I was that young.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
No,
and
because I
fortunately,
sorry.
yeah, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Go on, no, 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 no. You finish and then I'll add.
Sure. So fortunately, I do also have a picture of that incident. So I have really kept that in my heart. So yeah, go ahead.
That's super adorable because I remember watching a few years back a documentary where not few years back, I think it was 11 or 12. I remember watching a documentary, reading an article which talked about children realizing dysphoria or realizing that they're not the gender they're assigned to when they're like 4 or 5. But so at that point I was trying to sort of imagine what could be the nuances that bring it out, right? And it's so wonderful that you remember it, and it's such an adorable situation also where your father was like, "Ah, beta, chalo, you also do."
Yeah. I'm also
Any other?
glad that my parents created that space where I could do that. So,
Yeah,
they didn't reject
absolutely,
what I wanted to do, but just, I'd
absolutely.
let it flow. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Do you have anything else that's like cute and happy stuff to share?
I mean, my life has been pretty much after 16-year-old. I have had these societal difficulties that I had, but in itself, it has been really beautiful. I mean, with finding queer spaces to finding people
Hmm.
who were so willing to accept me, and I think I had not normalized my identity in my mind, but my friends have. So for me, I am this special gay
Hmm.
person that exists, but in their mind, they are just this. Ria, you're just a normal human being, okay? You're just queer. But nevertheless, I like to see myself as special because, yeah. But yeah, I
Of
mean,
course,
jokes
why not?
apart. But yeah, I mean, it has been a beautiful journey. Also, falling in love, and you know, I've had, multiple heartbreaks, but I think falling in love
Hmm.
also has been a beautiful phenomena for me, where,
That's
I
lovely.
have experienced so much of support from my partners, and I
Hmm.
always, I always mention them, in all
Hmm.
my talks, because they have been this pivotal,
Yep.
people in my life who have really pushed me to become who I was. So, one of my dearest partners was Sanjana, who we dated for 4 years. It was the most beautiful
Hmm.
thing that I ever had with anybody. And I
Hmm.
think, we have had this journey of coming out to our parents together, and also, fighting fighting the society together. We have done multiple videos, which, at that point of time, because it was before Section 377, a lot of people,
Hmm.
were inspired by that. They got to know that, yes, two women could love each other and just hold hands in public,
Hmm.
because I'm not that shy person, I like to, brag about my love to everybody on social media, or just
That's
like
sweet.
on the street right there. But I think with her, we created a revolution with our relationship. And I think
That's sweet.
it has been beautiful, right? So, even, I mean, a message to everybody would also be that, although falling in love could be really scary, where you have broken your heart multiple times, but I think it's
Hmm.
totally worth it. And, with healthy relationship, with forming boundaries, I think relationships really help you grow. So, I think,
Yep.
I think that's one of the most beautiful things that I have had in my life, and I'm actually looking forward to finding my soulmate yet again, and also marry
Aw.
her in future if we have all those legal rights and
Yeah,
all of that. So yeah, definitely.
of course.
Yeah.
So, people watching can send in questions if they have any. And I have one more question. How to start the conversation with parents about conditioning and gender in general? Where do
Mm.
you start? With what do you start?
Yeah. I think, like, even before starting, one thing that we need to understand is that they are definitely going to take time to understand the entire concept of LGBT. So, to expect that, you'll come out one fine day and they will accept you is unrealistic for anybody. Even for me, I came out at the age of 16, and yet I think that it would have been better if I would be financially stable and then I would have come out, because
Hmm.
I didn't know what would happen next, right? I was lucky that,
Hmm.
they were willing to accept me. And although they hadn't
Hmm.
understood LGBT totally and completely, you know, uh, I was lucky that they accepted me. But, yes, this is something that we need to understand, that they will also take time. My parents took
Hmm.
around 3 to 4 years to really understand what LGBT was, that
Right. Right.
what trans was, what other identities, apart from mine was. So I think it's also
Hmm.
good to start early, where you are educating your parents before coming out, and also
Hmm.
constantly making yourself feel, just identifying whether your environment is safe. That is also very important, because everybody wants to come out. I also understand that it is a very special moment for you, but to know whether your space is safe, whether you'll get acceptance from people, whether you have, places to go or places to seek out to for help. I think that is very important to,
Hmm.
understand before you come out, and
Yep.
also educate your parents before you do that, because they will also take time. The same conditioning has been for them, maybe even more years of conditioning,
Yep.
right? So that is very important,
Yep.
and taking it slow is also something that can be done, and keeping resources here and there at your home also helps, because someday or the other your parent will
Yep.
pick it up and read and all of that. And there are also queer uh, you know parents of queer people who are there, right? So the entire Speaker
Hmm.
organization is doing really beautiful work in this field. So you can also get in touch with them to help your parents understand what it is. So,
Hmm.
even my parents are a part of it, and it has been a beautiful journey. So
Love
I
it.
think, going slow, helping them understand it with examples and all of that, and also
Hmm.
understanding where their concerns are coming from. Is it
Hmm.
society? Is it religion? Is it that they think where people won't able to survive and all of that? So, I mean, if their
Hmm.
concern is religion, maybe you can expose them to, queer religion or stuff like that, so that they understand
Right.
that it's not about going against religion or stuff like that. If they think
Hmm.
that you won't be able to you won't be accepted by the society, then you can expose them to content that says that there are so many people out there who are so
Yep.
successful in their field. Being gay or being queer, it does not matter. So I think that is there, and making them understand that this is just a very small part of your identity. Although we think, we as queer people, embrace ourselves, embrace our queer
Yep.
identity, is one thing that when we need to understand is, at the end of the day, when a day comes where everything is normalized, being
Hmm.
gay would just be a very small part of our identity. Although it is a big part of our identity now, we'll create a space where, all of us would not be queer activists. We would just be activists working in the field of environment or
Yep.
working in the field of direct rights. And at the end of the day,
Yep.
we'll be queer, we'll be gay. So I
Yep.
think making parents understand that too is very important. So वही है
Yeah.
कि expose them to what their concerns are. So I think that helps. And of also, one very important point is, when we talk about mental health also, a lot of
Hmm.
times, the entire idea of conversion therapy and all of it still exists. And so I think, letting them understand or exposing them to therapy or getting them in touch with queer affirmative therapists also help, and it will help you come
Yep.
out also. So yeah, these are some of the things that you could do.
Absolutely. I mean, that is like literally everything that I could think of. I don't have anything to add at this point. So I see we have two related questions. One question is, what is the difference between gender fluid and non-binary? And we have another question which is about what's the difference between bigender and gender fluid.
Sure. So, I mean, new terms and new identities will still come up. This is something that all of us, we need to understand that even though we do not understand all of it, there would be an identity which would be Z identity in future. We just need to respect it. So getting back to the question, when we talk about being non-binary or gender fluid, how I see it is, being non-binary is an umbrella term which consists of being gender fluid or being agender or anything that is not binary. So we see binary as being
Right.
a man or a woman, and so a non-binary would be anything which is not binary, right? So, but
Right.
a lot of times people might explain it in their own terms, in how they experience themselves. A lot of people will just
Right.
call themselves non-binary, and that would mean that their identity is fluid. So they choose that label for themselves because they do not want to fit into the label of gender fluid. But how
Right.
also when we talk about being gender fluid, how I explain is that, my gender has been pretty fluid in a way where there are times where I feel like a man, a woman, both, none. This is a very typical explanation of being gender fluid, but there can be many other, experiences of gender fluid where, even today, I mean, it has been a long time where I'm feeling pretty feminine, and I'm not feeling quite masculine. I'm just this diva these days, right? And it has to do nothing with what's going on, if I'm on my periods and stuff like that. Nothing like that. But I think it's just how I experience my identity, right?
Right.
So yeah,
Right.
that means being gender fluid. And if we talk about, bigender, there are a lot of times where people will say they're bigender, which means that they identify with being a man or a woman at the same point or at different points, and they don't feel the fluidity. They have rigid like experiences of being a man or a woman at different
Right.
times. So that is how I see it. And you can also, I mean, these days we also consider being transgender as an umbrella term under which comes
Right.
non-binary or being gender fluid. So these
Right.
are the play of identities and labels, and yeah.
And like you were saying, and like we were discussing earlier, it is fluid, so we can get very many other labels, and we just need to understand that all of them are valid. Right.
Yeah.
So another question we had earlier, I'm going to make this the last question since I don't think we have any more. So is it necessary to be androgynous expression when you identify as gender fluid? This is, I think, a regular question again.
I mean, regular but really important, right? So,
Important, yes.
yeah, I mean, one of the really funny, stories that I remember is when I turned 15 and I was related to, I was exposed to queer content, through pornography or through, whatever representation that I had back then. I thought that, lesbians had to had short hair, right? And so the first thing that I did after I passed out 10th was to get a short haircut. Because I thought that if I was lesbian, I had to do that, right? And when I got my haircut, it gave me a sense of freedom, liberty, not because now I was lesbian and a valid lesbian, but because I realized that I had also a journey of being gender fluid, and I wanted to express myself that way. But today that I am gender fluid, I really don't care about how I'm expressing myself. And that's the point. You don't have to do things and get validated because that is the right thing to do. And I think that's a problem even inside the community, honestly, where with certain label comes responsibilities, right? To look a certain way, to behave a certain way. But I think if you are feeling good, if you are embracing yourself, if you feel like a diva, then you shouldn't care about what other people think and
Yeah.
even what other queer people think. I think that's something
Yep.
that all of us need to understand. If you're not gay enough for another gay person, then that's absolutely okay, you know. So I mean, I've met a lot of, feminine lesbians who feel really invalidated in the community because they are
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you how can you be lesbian? I mean, you can still be bisexual that way, but you can't be lesbian because you don't have short hair. I mean, that's really pathetic of us, but I think, yeah, the gist of this is, if just love yourself, that's how we should go ahead with
Yeah.
it. I mean, there will always be somebody who's not satisfied with how
Yep.
we express ourselves or our lifestyles, right? Even our
Yep.
parents, our parents someday would come up with some things that they are not satisfied with. But
Yeah.
if you are taking care of yourself, your mental health,
Yeah.
your boundaries, even if it's about,
Yep.
creating boundaries in your family or outside your family, you're
Hmm.
taking care of yourself, your mental health, loving yourself, I think that's enough. You don't have
Hmm.
to care about anything else in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, there will always be somebody who is not happy with what we are doing. It reminds me of that joke. बिरयानी हो क्या सबको satisfy करने के लिए?
Exactly. That's true. Even with biryani, someday or the other, there would be something that a person would come up with, right?
Yeah.
You can't do it. It's very
Yeah.
unrealistic, right? Please.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think, like you said, lesbians. I think it mostly is like it is a stereotype. It's not mostly a stereotype. It's a stereotype that
Yeah.
lesbians will have short hair. And I think one thing I just want to add to the question was gender expression has nothing
Mm.
to do with gender identity, right? So you
Mm.
identify a certain way does not mean you have to present yourself a certain way. So
True.
yeah, I mean, like I've had this like I know somebody who identifies as a non-binary, and they're very femme presenting, and they
Mm.
as well fight a lot. I can present myself anyway. I don't have to stick to a certain way. Like 2 months, I'll feel feminine. Maybe after that, I'll become masculine. Cut my hair. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
absolutely lovely talking to you. I mean, we've covered so many important points. Do you have anything else to add at the end as a closing?
I mean, just that. I mean, before that, of course, it was an honor for me too to have such a lovely and open-ended
Absolutely.
conversation with you and have a little, moments of laughter also. I think at the end of
Oh
this
yeah.
session, I just want to say that, uh, again, going back to acceptance that a lot of times as queer people, we lose hope a lot of times in our journey. And,
Hmm.
not that I don't, uh, I'm aspiring to be a life coach. I'm just on the verge of becoming a professional life coach. But even
Hmm.
with being a mental health expert or being a life coach, I too have, bad days, or I too doubt myself.
Yeah.
Or I too lose hope in whether I'll find love or whether I'll find the worth of my life and all of that. But remembering that, these experiences make us into a really inspiring person is really important, right? So even if maybe you have
Yep.
not come out, it's really courageous to, have that identity in a society where you are constantly fighting with yourself. I think that's incredibly courageous. If you have come out, that's courageous, right? If you are, if you're planning to come out, that's courageous. If you're planning not to come out to your parents,
Yeah.
even that's courageous. So just understanding that, having faith in yourself, and things will get better if you stand up for yourself. One day or the other, you have to do that. So I think just not losing hope, knowing that you are your own inspiration and loving yourself more and more every day is really important. And time heals. So even if you are going through a hard time in life, I mean, there are still lessons that we learn, and with time we'll heal and become inspirations. So yeah, that's about it.
Absolutely. It was great talking to you. Thank you for taking our time and doing this. And it's an absolute joy to listen to all the benchmarks that you set with discussing love with your parents, love life with your parents, and all the joys that we discussed. I mean, typically, like I've heard sessions where we do discuss the downside of being queer, But for once, I wanted to like, okay, let's make it a happy thing, because there are a lot of happy things as well. That's kind of like I was able to succeed. I mean, thanks
Yeah,
to thanks to all the contributions.
thank you
I mean,
so
I
much.
hope you had
Thank
a
you
good
so much
time.
for
We
this
should do
podcast.
this again.
Absolutely, we should. We should.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.